And we're good to go. The Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford, agenda for council on Tuesday, May the 25th, 2021 at a little after 2 p.m. And I will say this important notice that the meeting is being held electronically, and in order to ensure transparency, an audio recording of this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, on the Village of Marrickville-Wolford YouTube channel, and posted on the website immediately following the adjournment of the meeting. And for folks listening, I'll just confirm who is on the line at the moment. And I'm Mayor Struthers. We have Mr. Malloy, Mr. Foster, Mr. Cameron, and Mr. Helpney, our council members. Also staff on the line, we have our CAO, Mr. Robertson, our Deputy Clerk, Christina, our Treasurer, Kirsten, and also Consultant Planner Forbes Simon from JP2G, and from the Project Manager for Source Water Protection, Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, Marika Livingston. Just a very brief opening comment for members before I formally call the meeting to order. Just a wee update from the weekly meeting chaired by the Lanark Leeds Grenville Health Unit Chair, Doug Malenka, joined by other mayors from the Health Unit region, our MP, Mr. Reid and Mr. Barrett from the region, and our MPP, Steve Clark, and Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Paula Stewart. Very briefly, as Dr. Stewart indicated, that the numbers in terms of COVID in our area seem to be, quote-unquote, settling down. They tend to be mainly the COVID variant. The doctor underscored regular COVID variant or not, the vaccines that are available are the right vaccines to have. There has been apparently a wee bit of an uptake, or an uptick, if you will, over the weekend in terms of the numbers. The other point made was that students, children aged 12 to 19 are expected to be fully vaccinated by September, with the numbers, though, going significantly down in the whole area of Lanark, Leeds, and Grenville. It's certainly testimony to everyone following guidelines and getting vaccinated. Notwithstanding that, the provincial-wide numbers do need to be in the low 100s. We're not there yet. In order to go to step one, which the earliest would be June the 4th, I think, as everyone knows, and minimum of 21 days between each of the steps. Nonetheless, a lot of perhaps not a lot of detail, but being able to stay focused in terms of the roadmap to reopening. A very clear outline of that is available on the Health Unit website. So a lot of that information folks probably already know, but the point being in our area, while there may have been a little bit of an uptake over the weekend, the numbers are definitely settling down in our area, and that's good news. Having said that, I do call the meeting to order, and following our agenda, I would ask members if anyone has needs to disclose a pecuniary interest, and if so, the general nature thereof. So I'll go around the table. Anyone have a pecuniary? Do you have a pecuniary interest, Mr. Malloy?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
No.
Mr. Cameron.
No.
And Mr. Helpney.
No.
Thank you, gentlemen, and nor do I. And again, as we've done in past practice, for the motions, I will name a member of council to be the mover and a seconder. Unless anybody does not want to be the mover and a seconder, we'll move forward with the motion. And if they do not want to be the mover or seconder, just indicate, and I can change the name. So the first motion is for our agenda. So the mover would be Mr. Foster, and the seconder would be Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the regular council meeting of May the 25th, 2021, as circulated. I'm going to ask, I always want to say all in favor. In favor, Mr. Malloy.
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Halkney?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. The motion is carried. And first up on our agenda is a report by Forbes Simon regarding a consent application B15-21. And I will read the motion to get it on the table, and Mr. Foster can speak. Sorry, Mr. Foster. Sorry, Mr. Simons can read his report. So the mover would be Mr. Cameron, and the seconder would be Mr. Malloy. Whereas on March the 8th, 2021, the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor for Wolford received planning report of Forbes Simon of JP2G Consultants, Inc. regarding consent application B-15-21, dated February the 24th, 2021, for information purposes. And whereas Council deferred consideration of consent application B-15-21 to allow for the matters as outlined in the aforementioned report to be addressed. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor for Wolford does hereby receive supplementary planning report of Forbes Simon of JP2G Consultants, Inc. regarding consent application B-15-21, dated May the 21st, 2021, together with a municipal consent questionnaire and aggregate resource impact assessment prepared by Graham Bonham Carter, which satisfies Council's request. And the Council has considered the aggregate resource impact assessment, and that Council does hereby recommend approval of consent application B-15-21 to the consent granting authority, subject to the conditions as expressed in the municipal questionnaire. Having said that, good afternoon, Forbes, and I would ask you to speak to your reports and your recommendation to Council. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and good afternoon, Council. Back in February 24th, there was a report presented to Council on B-15-21 Flynn, and at that time, the proposal was to create about a 5-acre lot on Pioneer Road, and when we did our review at that time, it was found that the property was impacted by an identification of an aggregate deposit in the sort of general vicinity of the property. And as a result, the recommendation was to defer consideration until there was an aggregate assessment carried out. We have now had a chance to review an aggregate assessment dated May 18th. The report appears to be consistent with the guidelines established by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And the report indicates that the resource is only partially located on the applicant's property and is quite thin and a relatively small deposit. They've identified it somewhere in the neighborhood of 17,000 cubic meters, which is on the low side for commercial viability. The report concluded that the size, thickness, and variable composition of the resource are not feasible for commercial development, and as a result concluded that the economic viability of the deposit is questionable, and therefore the lot would serve a greater long-term public interest, and that public health and safety impact issues have been are minimal. There were no other matters that were identified, Mayor, when we reviewed this report. This was the only outstanding issue, and as matters now stand, we would recommend support of the application with the standard conditions, that being payment of taxes and registration of the survey and payment of cash in lieu of parkland. That concludes my report, Mayor. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Forbes. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, just a clarification. What is the what are we speaking of? What is it, gravel or what?
It was a sand deposit.
A sand deposit? Okay, thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Foster?
No.
Any questions, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you.
Actually, might I just want to cross T's and dot I's, and it's a memory thing for me, and it may be for you as well. Was this the item that you had previously indicated you had a pecuniary interest?
No, it was
Okay.
the other property.
That's great. Thanks. Good memory, better than mine. Go ahead with your question, Mr. Cameron.
Just for clarification, perhaps Ford can assist us on this question that I have. That aggregate study, is this going to become a common practice for every request that we receive? And if so, have we approached the county on perhaps changing its strategy? I believe the reasoning behind it was to create a deposit of aggregate that they could use for future infrastructure projects. So, and this is a charge of $3,000 per request. So I'm afraid that it may have an impact on our ability to increase our population as we move forward, because it may scare some people off of going through this process with an additional $3,000 over and above all the costs that they have to incur at this point.
So you hear the question all right, Forbes?
I did, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Councillor Cameron, one of the major changes with the new official plan was the recognition of the aggregate deposits and the need to be set back a minimum of 300 meters from those deposits for any lots being created. Anything within that 300-meter setback has to be subject to one of these studies. Is this going to become a common occurrence? It's quite likely we're going to see a larger number of these types of supporting studies because of the new official plan policy, and it's a provincial requirement that these resources be protected, and it's a provincial requirement for that 300-meter setback. And I think as time goes on, we'll see more and more of these types of studies, and that's a reality of doing development in the rural area in 2021. I'm not sure if that answers the question, other than to say that it is going to become more and more common.
Just if I could, Forbes, just sort of supplementary to Mr. Cameron's question, it's not on any and all properties, only properties that are within whatever the distance you mentioned to an identified, an already identified aggregate deposit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's not just any and all properties, it's just specifically to those.
Any property within 300 meters of a licensed pit or an identified resource would be required to do this type of work. Yes.
Thank you. Does that answer your question all right, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more clarity. Perhaps, Mr. Mayor, you could answer my second question. That would be, given the fact that the majority of our municipality would meet that criteria for potential pits, an aggregate supply, has our municipality or any other municipality approached the upper tier governments and perhaps changing a strategy and buying up properties as they become for sale to sort of circumnavigate the private property to allow people to move forward with whatever they decide to do with the severances and so on and so forth. Has that been a discussion at county council? Are you aware of anything like that? That perhaps that might be a direction that the county or the province may take? So
the first part, I don't think the majority of our properties are within 300 meters or whatever the number is Mr. Simons mentioned of an aggregate deposit known, privately, functioning or in the inventory, if you will. I'm not sure if Mr. Forbes could speak to that, but there, you know, the municipal and county zoning maps clearly show them. And that's number one. And, you know, the county, I would not imagine the municipality nor the county is in the business of buying up aggregate deposits, would be the answer to that. We're not in the business of owning aggregate deposits.
Well, yeah, I wasn't saying the municipality. I was saying the upper tier governments, because it's a part of their official plan. It was something that they initiated, and we'd followed through on with ours. I was just wondering if that was a discussion. Perhaps it might be a different way of approaching what they identified could be a possible need in the future, and it would, you know, allow private landowners a little leniency and allow municipalities to move forward on development. You know,
yeah, there was not any.
Adding an extra charge to, you know, $3,000, in the tune of $3,000 or more, you know, could be a deterrent for some people, you know, to allow progress to happen. That's just a question I'd like to.
Yeah, there was not, has not been, to my knowledge, certainly not this term at County Council, nor previously that I'm aware of any discussion of the county purchasing those properties. And I think it's important that, and Forbes can correct me on this, the reason it's in the county policy is because it's legislated by the province of Ontario that these studies are required to be done no matter who owns the property. Is that correct, Mr. Simon?
Yes, it is, Mayor.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of whether the county owned the deposit or not. A study would be required.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
One of the things that may help Mr. Cameron, the aggregate resources have been identified as one of the primary resources to be protected in Ontario by the provincial government. It's one of the most valuable rural resources we have, and it's a finite resource. And so protecting these that are commercially viable is really quite important for the overall economic benefit of the province. One of the things I do know that some upper tiers have done, Councillor Cameron, is they've taken all this raw information about the aggregate deposits and have gone through and filtered out those deposits that they don't believe are economically viable. It is a large undertaking, but it is something that would make sure that any of the deposits that are identified in your municipality are commercially viable and therefore significant. And that may be something that would assist in the United Counties over time as a study like that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, Mr. Cameron?
No, thank you very much. Appreciate the input. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Helpney?
No, none.
Okay, gentlemen, you've read the report. You've had the overview from our consultant planner. You've had your questions and answers. If there aren't any other questions, speak up. If there is, otherwise, you've heard the motion, and I will call the vote on the motion. All in favor? Mr. Malloy, are you in favor?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the motion is carried. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you very much, Forbes. I'm just double checking on the agenda, and I think that's the sum and substance of your assistance today in our agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong, then the next two items are source water protection and RVCA. So, Mr. Sons, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll have my leave. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yep. You as well now. Bye now. And the next item on our agenda, to get paperwork organized, is the extension of the agreement for source water protection with the RVCA, and I'll put the motion on the table, and our the project manager, Marika Livingston, can speak to the information and the report. And possibly municipal staff might as well. Prior to that, I'm just reading the report from Mr. Robertson as well. So I'll put the motion on the table first, and a mover would be Mr. Malloy, and a seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby receive report CD-01-2021, being a report regarding an agreement to amend source Protection Plan Part 4 Enforcement Transfer Agreement for information purposes, and that Council does hereby give favorable consideration to Bylaw 34-2021, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of the aforementioned amendment. There you have the motion. I will first, I think, turn to Mr. Robertson, who might want to speak briefly to the staff report, and then, as I say, we have the project manager on the line with us as well. So over to you, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Arthur. Just to clarify, the report was actually authored by Stacey Lloyd and then approved by me. But unless Stacey has anything in particular to provide additional context on, I would suggest perhaps that Marika Livingston can advise council effectively.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go over to that. We will go over to Marika Livingston. And just for my edification, I think other members will know as well, the source, I keep on saying source water protection. The source protection plan is for regarding areas around municipal water sources, in our case, our municipal well, and that the RVCA is, by this agreement, takes on not only that responsibility, but carries the any potential liability as well on behalf of the municipality. So I've got that correct. Over to you, Marika, and welcome to our council meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to offer Stacey the opportunity if she wanted to provide any background. Otherwise, I'm happy to give some more information.
Okay, that's great. Good afternoon, Stacey.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Marika. I think the background is presented in the report. Essentially, we are a participant in the Mississippi Rideau Source Water Protection Plan, and we're looking at that specific Part 4 Enforcement Authority and the role that that Marika is going to talk about. So I'll just, if you don't mind, Marika, thank you very much.
Sure. So just to give council some background, we do have a municipal working group, which is made up of about 30 municipal staff members, and Stacey is your representative on the municipal working group, and she does a great job liaising between our program and to council and to other municipal staff. So she put together this great report for you guys for your consideration. So it is time to revise and review the transfer agreement that we currently have in place under Part 4 of the Clean Water Act. So what that means essentially is Part 4 of the Clean Water Act is the enforcement responsibilities under the Clean Water Act. So we, on your behalf, would negotiate risk management plans. We would deal with the screening of future development for source water protection policy considerations. We would deal with any outstanding risk management plans. We would also deal with enforcement of those risk management plans, so making sure that the individuals who hold those risk management plans are adhering to them. We would also be working towards ensuring compliance, so having in place a compliance program, whether it be, site visits, phone calls, or mailing of letters. So we do all that work on your behalf as per the Part 4 Enforcement Transfer Agreement that was negotiated in 2014, right before our Source Protection Plan came into effect in 2015. But that agreement technically expired as of July 2017. Now, there was a term a clause in the expiration term that allowed it to continue in the absence of a new agreement. However, over the last few years, our staff have been working with municipalities that have these agreements in place to renegotiate and to standardize the agreements, because when we completed the original agreements, there was 3 versions floating around. So we are now looking to standardize that to be one identical agreement for all municipalities. In addition to that, we are also looking to extend the agreement to allow us to continue on doing this work. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Marika. Any questions that go around the table? Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
No, thank you, sir.
Mr. Foster?
I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I was just wondering about liabilities here that we have basically handed over the responsibilities, the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection. Anyway, they're doing the job for us. Now, if there's a case of a legal challenge or anything, are we on the hook, or is our people we did this to, are they on the hook?
Marika, are you going to answer that question?
That's a great question. I believe the terms are outlined in the agreement that is attached below. And so we do have the insurance, the minimum insurance to make sure that we can carry out this work on your behalf. So that we have trained risk management staff that have been trained by the province. And so in addition to that, we also have additional protections from the ministry, specifically the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. There's a specific clause under the Clean Water Act that allows risk management officials and inspectors to be protected if they operate under their best interests for the development or the application that they're working with. So there's a bit of some flexibility there that, you know, if we followed the Clean Water Act and if we exercised our powers and we completed our due diligence, then there's some additional protection should we be pursued legally down the road.
That answer your question, Mr. Foster?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, I have a question. If we do not decide to go with this agreement, then we would be, as a municipality, on the hook, and we'd be responsible to do all our own due diligence. So, is that correct?
Please go ahead, Marika.
That is correct?
I do believe, Marika, you said yes, that would be correct?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in essence, by going ahead with this plan, that you would basically take over all the responsibilities and remove that from the municipality, and you would be our sort of guiding light in any upcoming events that we needed to discuss about protecting the water. Is that correct?
Marika?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And there was an item here about a cost for $3,000 for training. Is that for training a municipal staff member for us as a cost? And is that training required every year, or is that $3,000 training good for the term of the agreement?
Marika?
So
if I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, is this Stacey Lloyd?
Yes, Stacey Lloyd. Sorry to
Yes,
interrupt there. I did want to mention when I entered that information, Councillor Cameron, under the budget and legal implications of the report, it was based on, if we were actually responsible for training an individual. And I'm sorry, Marika, I think I interrupted you there.
Not at all. So I can add that municipal staff would have to go to Toronto for the training that is offered through the ministry. So that would include the costs associated potentially with the course and hotel and et cetera. But in addition to that, there's also some ongoing training that happens on an annual basis, and there's also monthly risk management official and inspector meetings to stay current and up to date with what's happening in the province. So I believe that number that Stacey has there includes the cost associated with the upkeep.
Okay. Thank you very much to both of you. I appreciate your input. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any questions, Mr. Helpney?
No.
Thank you. Okay, members, you've heard the motion. The council does hereby give favorable consideration to the bylaw. You've heard the whole motion. I'll go around the table to ask if everyone is in favor. Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And the motion is carried. Thank you. And the companion to that is the actual bylaws. So I'll have a mover and a seconder for that. The mover would be Mr. Cameron, and the seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 34-2021, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement to amend Source Protection Plan Part 4 Enforcement Transfer Agreement, be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 34-2021 be read a third and final time and passed. All, pardon me, all in favor? Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And that is carried. Thank you, gentlemen. And next on our agenda is an item regarding the North Granville New Western Quadrant well. And we have a motion for that, and we still have Marika with us on the line, so I'll put the motion on the table first. And the mover would be Mr. Malloy, and a seconder would be Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford endorses the proposed amendment under Section 34 of the Clean Water Act to revise the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan to add a new municipal well system for the municipality of North Granville into the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Plan and assessment reports. And I believe we're getting this because we are in that, I'm going to use the expression, that community of interest, if you will, of the proximity to the new well that is being proposed in North Granville. Having said that, I will turn it over to, again, to Marika to speak to the report and information and recommendation. Marika.
Thank you, Mayor. So the new proposed well in Kemptville, it will impact the wellhead protection area for the village in Marrickville-Wolford drinking water system. So we completed some technical work in previous years that have shown that the wellhead protection area for the Kemptville drinking water system that is located adjacent to the Marrickville drinking water system, that they draw water from the same aquifer, and it's the same source for both systems. Due to this interaction of groundwater, we also have to update the Marrickville drinking water wellhead protection areas. But we do need to seek council endorsement from the municipalities that are affected by this amendment. So there are a number of municipalities that are affected, namely the City of Ottawa, and a handful of others are also impacted by this. So we need to receive council support in order to proceed with these changes and submission to the province. We're expecting submission to the province to happen in the fall, and there'll be lots of opportunity for the public to comment on this. So we're anticipating to start public consultation in early July, which gives the public an opportunity to see the updated mapping, to see the updated technical reports, and to make comments and submit questions. But prior to public consultation, we do have to do pre-consultation, which involves reaching out to councils of those that are affected by this amendment. So I am here to answer any questions you may have about this proposed change. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Marika. I'll go around the table if there are any questions. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, please. So just to make sure I understand completely, Marika, the new well for North Grenville will be taking its water from the same aquifer that we get ours from?
Marika?
That is correct.
Okay,
That is
and so, thank you. So what's the implication there? Is there, I mean, North Grenville is a growing municipality. Is there any chance that they will be drawing more water from the aquifer than the aquifer has? Or will they be drawing so much water from the aquifer that our sources will get diminished?
Please go ahead, Marika.
That is an excellent question, but I can say that the aquifer that they're drawing from is very it's very sustainable. I'm not an engineer or a hydrogeologist, so I can't speak to the capacity of the aquifer, but I do believe from the studies that we've seen from the consultants who've completed the work, there is ample capacity to service both municipalities and their growing populations.
So would that be something that we would see in the near future? A report on that item?
Go ahead, Marika.
So the technical reports are available for both councils and the public to see. So we could share that information with you, but the increase in uptake of water to service this new well won't have an impact on the water quantity for either municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Foster?
No questions.
Mr. Cameron?
Mr. Malloy took my question, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Halpney?
No question.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. You've heard the motion. I will go around the table looking for approval of the motion. All in favor? Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, just one more quick question. So, is this coming back to us? Sorry, is this coming back to us at a later date?
Marika?
So this is step one of the pre-consultation stage. So right now we're pre-consulting with municipalities and implementing bodies. So other implementing bodies might include some different ministries who implement policies on our behalf. And then there's a public consultation opportunity whereby there's a broader outreach, and we share this in newspapers, on websites of our municipalities and social media, et cetera. So there is another opportunity to see this, but I'm not sure to what extent you're looking to see, how much information you want to see.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm just somewhat concerned about sharing an aquifer with no matter how big the aquifer is, there's always the possibility that they do dry up, or they certainly lose capacity. So we're going to be sharing an aquifer. Us plus other municipalities are going to be sharing an aquifer with a rather quick-growing municipality to the east, and that could have some effect on us. So I'm just want to keep our eye on that possibility, even though you say the aquifer is not going to be affected. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Malloy. All in favor, Mr. Foster?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. The motion is carried. And I'd like to thank Marika very much for joining us this afternoon and assisting with the two previous items, the Quadrant Well and the Part 4 Enforcement Authority Agreement. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just checking the agenda. There isn't anything else on here for requiring your expertise. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and staff. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Marika.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And next on our agenda is the minutes from our previous meeting on May the 10th. So a mover would be Mr. Cameron, and a seconder would be Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor for Wolford does hereby approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of May the 10th, 2021, as circulated. Unless there are any errors and/or omissions, I'll go around the table and ask for approval of the minutes. Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Certainly.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Helpme?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's carried. And next, gentlemen, under correspondence, and there are a number of items I thought I'd put on for council's information. And the first item is regarding the potential for permanent, remote learning at schools, particularly in our area. So mover and a seconder. The mover would be Mr. Foster, and the seconder, Mr. Malloy. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor for Wolford does hereby receive the presentation entitled Concerns and Considerations about Making Remote Learning Permanent in Ontario Education, prepared by the Upper Canada District School Board, dated May the 20th, 2021, for information purposes. And I know there's a fair bit of information in the slide deck, gentlemen, but I thought it was important to share that with you. As the school board has indicated, that there are, I'm not sure if the right word is secret, but non-public considerations being taken place by the Ministry of Education provincially to potentially continue with remote learning in schools. And there's concern about that in regards to the impact, not just on the students, not just on families, but ultimately on municipalities, because the potential, if they do go to and stay with full-time remote learning, could have an impact such that there would be closure of many rural schools in the province of Ontario, and particularly in our region. And so that presentation was made at County Council. County Council is supportive of the concerns, and the direction was actually for the warden to seek an immediate meeting with the Minister of Education to indicate that in the long term that is not good to repeat students, families, and municipalities, communities throughout Leeds and Grenville. So it's for members' information. I wanted to share that with you. You've heard the motion, and I'll go around the table to receive the motion, receive the information for information purposes. All in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's carried. And next, again, for information purposes, is a presentation, but a specific focus in the presentation for the County Economic Development Office to the County Council. So it's for information purposes. So a mover or a seconder would be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Helpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor for Wolford does hereby receive the Leeds Grenville Economic Development Annual Update dated May the 5th, 2021 for information purposes. And I'm going to scramble a little bit if I just get my copy in front of me. That while it is, an annual what did I just say, update, the focus and we're to County Council was in the area of what happened last year and it continues into this year, and that is indeed the pandemic and the impact on our on businesses, and such that there was the creation of what is referred to as Economic Recovery Mayors Alliance and Task Force teams. big catalyst for that was, and members may well recall, there was a survey done across the counties, and I do believe including Prescott, Brockville, and Gananoque, and in particular in our area, a significant percentage of businesses were not aware of, members will recall and know, the federal government $40,000 monies available to businesses with the repayment schedule such that they may not have to repay all of the $40,000. And that raised a lot of eyebrows. A lot of people thought, how could you not know that? It happens. And so out of that information was that Mayor's Alliance and the task force teams where many chambers and certainly ours, I do believe as well, but our municipal staff were part of the working group, and ultimately with funding, dollars were available for digital Main Street. It's essentially to assist businesses to have an online presence, not just how to apply for the money, but how to set up and have, indeed, in some cases, one-on-one assistance. Also out of that, our municipal staff were able to develop a email list, if you will, an email blast for some 150 businesses throughout Marrickville-Wolford, and that was great in keeping our businesses informed in terms of new opportunities, in terms of some cases just getting information as the guidelines changed from last March into the summer, into the fall, and indeed where we are today. And also in some cases accessing in the early days the plexiglass that would be required at point of contact in terms of payment with cashiers and customers. And there is a currently underway now across the region is a new survey with businesses to find out what some of their challenges may or may not be at the moment, and from their perspective, what might be valuable to have to assist them moving forward. And that information, or that survey and the data, not just from a regional perspective, but right down to each individual municipality, will be made available to us, and that's expected, I believe, late this month, early in June. So I wanted to share that information with council members. So, gentlemen, you've heard you have the information. You've heard the motion. I'll go around the table for support of the motion. All in favor, Mr. Malloy.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron.
May I just ask a quick question?
Yes, please, go ahead.
This report is for Leeds Grenville. Are we going to receive a report along the same lines for us specifically, Marrickville-Wolford, how the pandemic has impacted us on business-wise? Is this something that look forward to?
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, finish your...
I just was wondering if this was something that we, as council, could look forward to in the near future as we move forward in the economic development strategies of the municipality. Are we going to receive a report specific to us, how our businesses were impacted by COVID?
Yeah,
I just want to know if that was a report that we'd be receiving.
No, we're not. As far as I know, we're not doing our own survey report. We're part of the, and as I mentioned earlier, part of the Mayor's Alliance and Task Force. So the counties, through the County Regional Economic Development Office, is doing it in tandem with and on the benefit of all of the municipalities. So Marrickville-Wolford is included in that. So the survey and the information and data out of that survey is being made available to us as a municipality. It obviously has the whole broader region as available as well. So, all in favor, Mr.
Cameron?
Cameron, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Healthy?
Yes.
Thank you. The reason sometimes I pause, gentlemen, is sitting in a room by yourself, you don't have faces in front of me, so I actually have to look up and imagine you're sitting in our council chambers. So it's my
perhaps
apologies.
cardboard cutters.
There you go. Not a bad idea. And next, yes, there is a motion, some information in the motion regarding a presentation to County Council on Affordable Housing. As for members' information, and a mover and a seconder for that would be the mover, Mr. Helpney, and the seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Maricville Wolford does hereby receive the presentation entitled Affordable and Attainable Housing Strategies in Grey County, prepared by Grey County, dated April the 19th, 2021, for information purposes. And, gentlemen, there is a county affordable housing task force subcommittee, if you will, of the Joint Services Committee for the counties. The Joint Services Committee is made up of the County Council and representation from Prescott, Brockville, and Gananoque. And as everybody well knows, there is a challenge in all parts of our region, and no less than Maricville Wolford, that housing that is not only affordable but also attainable for a whole host of reasons. And so the counties that are looking into that, Grey County is similar in size geographically and population perspective, and a similar mix of urban centers and sprawling rural communities. And so our county staff reached out to see what they've been doing, and that's the presentation that's in your package is what they have been doing. I think one of the significant part of much of the report would be on page 8, where we refer to potential barriers to housing by developers. You can have all kinds of programs from municipal programs, and if you think at the county level, that is under social services, and that tends to be not housing that's affordable, but rather affordable housing, which takes into entities that would have rent geared to income, usually referred to as social housing. I wanted to provide that information to members. It's for food for thought in the future. It's interesting on that page 8, and the presenter from Grey County said sometimes all the absolute best efforts to have housing built that is, as they say, affordable and attainable, there can ultimately be pushed back by whatever the local community might be, as it indicates on page 8, that NIMBYism. It's a great idea, but we don't want it in our community. Just one of the many challenges the municipalities face. The county housing task force is looking to wrap up, if you will, in September or certainly in the fall, and see what recommendations there might be to be shared with the private sector, but also what are some of the opportunities that municipalities could put in place to not just assist, but to encourage developers to build a variety of housing that could be affordable and attainable for not just new residents, but residents who live within our community already. So it's for members' information, and I'll go around the table to ask for approval of the motion. Are you in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, sir, I am.
Mr. Foster? Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Halpin?
Yes.
And that's carried. Thank you very much. And next is regarding the Eastern Ontario Rural Network, the GIG project, and it's for information purposes. So a mover and a seconder. A mover would be Mr. Cameron. Seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Maricville Wolford does hereby receive the following for information purposes: media release regarding the Eastern Ontario Rural Network GIG project dated May the 18th, 2021, and a letter of support for the Eastern Ontario Rural Network GIG project dated May the 18th, 2021. Members, you will recall, I sought your support and received it to have our municipality and Ms. Mayor supporting the GIG project. Well, this is for information purposes. I can share with you an email this morning, mid-morning, inviting me to participate in an announcement tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And it's being hosted by Minister Monsef, Federal Minister Monsef, who's the Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Rural Economic Development for Universal Broadband Fund. And apparently there is going to be an announcement that will bring improved high-speed internet to rural communities in Eastern Ontario. We shall see. Nonetheless, members, that's the motion is for information purposes, and we'll go around the table for support of the motion. All in favor? Mr. Malloy.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Foster.
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
And Mr. Helpney.
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you. And just a further piece of information on Thursday of this week, the 27th, there's a special county council meeting, and there's going to be an update, a presentation update by the Eastern Ontario Rural Network and Rogers. And gentlemen, you will recall Rogers was the successful applicant to receive funding for what is referred to as the Cell Gap project, and that is expanding cell service in Eastern Ontario with better connectivity and increased data transfer capacity and that sort of thing. So you will, I think, recall, I may have referred to, the number of new towers, number of towers, the existing towers will have upgraded, if that's the right term of technology on those towers. So should after Thursday be able to provide more information in terms of not just the broad timelines, but maybe more detailed information as to what the timeline might be in our area.
I'm just trying to find out. I know that there's a delay.
We've got some
minutes when we
voice coming in on the line. I think it might be Mr. Robertson. We're picking up your voice, sir. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to our agenda to library board minutes. And we have two sets of minutes, so I have a mover and a seconder for that. The mover would be Mr. Malloy. The seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby receive the following for information purposes: the Marrickville Public Library Board minutes of April the 14th, 2021, and the Marrickville Public Library Board minutes of April the 21st, 2021. Members, we have the minutes there, and before I ask if there are any questions, anything particular, Mr. Malloy, as our council liaison, you want to bring to our attention?
No, I was asking for one of those, and the other one went ahead as normal. Everything's moving along. We're waiting to hear from the government as to what hours libraries can do, how things will change, and then supposedly near future.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, sir. If any questions, will go around the table. Any questions, Mr. Foster?
No questions.
Mr. Cameron?
Just wanted to know how we're moving along with transferring the building back into our care. Have we been successful in completing that, or are we still in the process of doing that?
I do believe, I'll turn to Mr. Robertson, but I do believe at the direction of council, we wanted to have a conversation about that at a council meeting, which we haven't had, and so we will be having that, quotation marks, in the near future. Is that what staff have on their list for council, Mr. Robertson?
That's correct, Mayor Struthers.
Thank you. That answer your question all right, Mr. Cameron?
It does. Thank you. I'm in favor.
Yep. Thank you. And any questions, Mr. Halfney?
No questions.
Okay, then I'll go around the table to receive the board minutes of April the 14th and 21st for information purposes. All in favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, certainly.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
And Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's carried. And we'll move on. I'll just get a little organized, gentlemen, with a lot of paper in front of me here again. And this is a motion regarding development, on planning fees for the municipality. So I'll have a mover and a seconder, and then staff can speak to the report, and members can ask questions. So mover would be Mr. Foster, and a seconder would be Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor Wolford does hereby receive report finance-10-2021 regarding planning fees, and the Council gives favorable consideration to passing Bylaw 33-2021, being a bylaw to amend Bylaws 19-12 and 98-28 to increase planning fees in the village. And I do believe we have the report, Mr. Robertson and our Treasurer Kirsten, both with us on the line. And I'll turn to Mr. Robertson first, and then to Kirsten to speak to the report. And over to you, sir, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor Struthers. So the report essentially outlines rate changes that staff are recommending after having surveyed area municipalities to bring us in line with what other area municipalities are doing, and also to recover the correct amount of our expenses when reviewing applications through the Planning Act. Kirsten will speak to perhaps some more details on that, but it's essentially the nature of the report.
Thank you, sir. Was there anything in particular you wanted to add at this point, Kirsten?
No, nothing in particular. Just again, our planning fees are sort of been lagging, compared to the ones from surrounding municipalities, and a lot of it is a fee-based system, and we do need to make sure we have enough revenue to offset. That's all. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So I will go around the table. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, sorry, there was a word you said and I didn't quite get it. So Kirsten, can you just reiterate the fees? I'm looking at the chart, but you figure the fees that we're applying are in equal to the ones, or in relatively equal to the other municipalities in our area?
No, actually, our fees tend to be on the lower side compared to other surrounding municipalities on the whole.
Okay, good. That's what they used to be anyway, and I think we prosper from that. We get people coming in and taking fees out for building here because it's cheaper to get a building going here in our municipalities compared to, say, North Grenville, for example. That was a statement, not a...
Yeah, I was just letting that soak in. Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Any questions, Mr. Foster?
Yes, under the Schedule A, page 7 of 8, so are we intending to significantly reduce the landfill fee garbage bag tags, the price of?
Actually, Councillor Foster, this report deals just specifically with planning fees.
Okay, well, you've added the Schedule A to Bylaw 33-2021.
Oh, yeah, that's because the bylaw has all sorts of fees combined under one bylaw, that's all.
Right, but so if we pass this bylaw and this schedule, then the changes will come into effect?
Yes, but we're only changing those planning fees. We're not changing any of the other items on the schedule.
Well, I beg to differ. If on page 7 under landfill fees, if this comes into effect, if we approve this, garbage bag tags in Wolford Ward will drop to 75 cents a tag, and in Miracle Ward it'll drop to $1.50 per tag.
Yes, that's an old bylaw which has since been amended, that part of it, I believe. That part, I believe, has been taken out and put under another bylaw. Perhaps Christina can correct me if I'm wrong, but the only fees we're intending to change are the planning fees.
I recognize that what you're saying, but what I'm hearing here as well is that if we vote on this bylaw as it exists, we will be adopting Schedule A to Bylaw 332021. And it will be consolidated with the previous bylaw. And in fact, our fees at the dump our garbage bag tag fees, for example. So I'm just saying we've added this stuff to this, and if we vote in favor of this bylaw, we'll also be voting in favor of this schedule. Is that correct, Mr. Robertson?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Thank you, Mayor Struthers. You know, I think from a procedural perspective, you are correct, Councillor Foster. So if it would please Council, I would suggest that staff, perhaps that staff or that Council defer this item and allow staff to pay a little closer scrutiny to the schedule, to the appendix that's included.
Is it possible a clarification in terms of process, Mr. Robertson or Christina? We could pass the motion regarding the financial report on planning fees, and we can give favorable consideration to the bylaw. In other words, that whole motion as written, but we will deal with the actual passing of the bylaw at the next meeting.
Your Worship, that's certainly an option. Yes, you can. I just want to make sure, I'm just looking through the report to make sure of the wording in regard to the attachment.
If I could jump in, just based on our page, headline Corporation of the Village of America-Wolford bylaw number 33-21, it specifically states that we will enact Schedule A of bylaw. So a deferral might be best.
Your Worship, I would concur with Councillor Foster. I think it's safer, and if you don't mind, if Council wouldn't mind, I think it'd be prudent for staff to have a closer look through the document just to make sure that, from a protocol perspective, that we're clean with it.
Sounds good. Mr. Foster, you're the mover. Mr. Cameron, you're the seconder. You're both in agreement with deferring the motion. Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes, with a comment, I don't see anything in there about development fees either, and I think perhaps a review is best. So I agree that we defer it. Thank you.
Yeah, fair enough, and perhaps that might be valuable if staff could just have a very brief comment and report at the next meeting why we do not have development fees. It's been spoken to many times before, and it's a significant amount of money that would be placed on a new house, and so therefore the cost of the house and how those dollars can be utilized, which is not going to the general coffers of the municipality. At any rate, something very brief to put into context why the municipality has not and is not considering that at the moment. But it's a good question from Mr. Cameron, and I think staff can provide something succinct to go with the information, hopefully at the next council meeting, this deferral. I think that's our expectation that can be done quite easily. Is that correct, Mr. Robertson?
Yes, it is, Mayor Struthers.
Thank you. So then technically I will turn to Mr. Robertson or Christina. Do I write on the motion, which I have a mover and a seconder, just write deferred and initial it?
That'd be acceptable, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. And I will not do anything with the bylaw because I don't need to write anything on it because I do not have a mover and a seconder, so I can just leave it as is. That was actually a question, Mr. Robertson. Made it sound like a statement.
I apologize, Your Worship. Could you
not
repeat?
have a mover and a seconder. I didn't ask for and did not have a mover and a seconder for the actual bylaw amendment. I don't need to write anything on that, or do you want me to write deferred on that as well?
It wouldn't hurt, Your Worship, but we'll certainly capture it in the draft minutes for council at your next meeting that the item was deferred.
I just wrote deferred on it and initialed it, so there we go. Thank you so much for your help on that. Good question, and so moving on. And next on our agenda are the report regarding the community grant program. And I'll put the motion on the table and then ask staff to speak to the report and any questions from members. So mover would be Mr. Helpney and a seconder would be Mr. Foster. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Maricville-Wolford does hereby receive Report Finance-11-2021, being a report regarding the 2021 Community Grant Program for information purposes, and the Council allocates the funds from the Community Grant line item to be distributed as follows. I'm not going to fill in the blank at the moment, but it would be 1, Maricville Organization for Culture and the Arts, 2, Maricville District Trail Society, 3, Friends of the Rideau. So I will ask Mr. Robertson and or Treasurer Kirsten to speak to the report and the recommendations.
Thank you, Worship. It's Mr. Robertson. I'll refer it to the Treasurer if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirsten.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Together or in front of Council, you will find my report, which basically outlines the community grant reports with staff's recommendation, corresponding to our existing policy. And then Council also has the grants to facilitate their discussion. But I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Around the table, ask if there are any questions. Mr. Malloy.
No, sir.
Mr. Foster.
Yes, actually. If we decide to exceed the $8,000 allotment, I was wondering which reserve pocket they would come out of if we did decide to fully fund the 3 applicants.
And
we wouldn't take it out of a reserve. What we would likely do is hopefully at the end of the year, we'd have to see if we're in a surplus or deficit position.
That's what you see. Yep.
And any questions, Mr. Cameron?
No, I'm in full support of it.
And Mr. Helpney?
No.
Okay, so before I move forward with the motion, it's blank, and I'm looking for the numbers that would potentially go in, and I'm just trying to find the right page here. So I will turn to staff to just help me fill in the blank. And
I believe those are on page 2, second half, near the bottom with the bullet points. I believe we have the amounts of the items right there, yeah.
So the Maricville Organization for Culture and Arts, just trying to find the...
that actually, the recommendation by staff for that one was to grant them out of their in-kind with a slightly reduced cash grant of $3,520.
So, cash, 3,000.
For both the cash and in-kind combined would be $3,520.
Yes, and the motion I have in front of me, though, it's.
Oh, sorry, correct.
So I do need to know the cash amount, please.
The cash amount would be $3,220.
$3,220.
Yep, and the in-kind was $300.
200 is the in-kind.
Sorry, 300. 300,
okay.
Yes.
And for the Maricville District Trail Society, it would be 1,900. 1,908. That's the cash value.
Yep. There were no in-kind requests for that.
Thank you. Yep. And for Friends of the Rideau, it's $2,500 is the cash and zero
No
in
in
kind.
kind, correct.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, thank you, Kirsten. Again, the motion is a two-part. The first part is receiving for information purposes the report, and the second part, the council allocates the funds for the community grant line item to be distributed as follows: 1, the Miracle Organization for Culture and the Arts, cash $3,220, in kind $300. 2, the Miracle District Trail Society, cash $1,980, zero in kind, and Friends of the Rideau, cash $2,500, zero in kind. Since everybody indicated they were had questions and/or were in support, I'll go around the table to pass the motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interject, you asked if there were questions as opposed to comments.
Fair enough. Yes, do you have a further comment, Mr. Foster?
Yes, I'd like to see the Miracle Organization for Culture and Arts, that their application, that we give them the full $5,000 they're asking for, as well as the $300 fee waiver. And the rationale for that is this is the first time that they're putting on an event like this. That's a significant, taking $1,800 out of their cash, or nearly $1,800, would be a significant reduction in their budget. There are no other events planned for this year that we will be assisting with that I'm aware of, and I would think it would be prudent for council at this time to try and give them a good fighting effort at putting on this first-time event and give them the full ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. So go around the table, ask if there are any questions or comments on that suggestion. And again, keeping in mind, it would put us in a deficit, over the budgeted amount for this particular program, the community grant program. And as our treasurer had said, that would fall into, at the end of the year, are we in a surplus deficit situation for the whole municipal budget? I will put it there. I think Mr. Foster makes a valid point that it warrants council's consideration. Obviously, very early days to ask staff, what does it look like to, between now and the end of the year, will we be in a surplus or deficit situation for the budget? The amount, and I think Mr. Foster indicated, did the math very well. It's a number slightly under $1,800 that would be over budget on the community grant program. Do you have any questions or comments on that, Mr. Malloy?
So just a couple of points. So Kirsten, we only got 4 applications this year?
That is correct, yes.
And so how many did we get last year? Do you remember? Do you recall?
I'm sorry, not off the top of my head, though, but we did get a lot more than this.
Okay. All right. And what's the, and just one more quick question, what's the financials on this? Like, we must have a budget. What's the total budget for grants?
It's $8,000.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And questions or comments regarding the suggestion from Mr. Foster? Do you have any, Mr. Cameron?
I agree with Mr. Foster. I think we should give them the extra $1,800 to assist them, considering the situation that we're in, and I believe that it's going to continue for the rest of the year. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a surplus at the end of the year. Yep. Friends of Rideau, did they indicate what the $2,500 would buy them? Did they say that they want for longer hours? Did they indicate any numbers on that?
That lets them extend their season, I believe, for another few weeks, their operating season, so that they can stay open longer.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments? Sorry, another question, Mr. Cameron?
No, I'm done, thank you.
Sorry, I thought I heard a voice. Okay. And any questions or comments on Mr. Foster's recommendation? Do you have any questions, Mr. Halfney?
No.
Okay, gentlemen, I don't either.
So, I did have another question though. That was the voice.
Mr. Malloy, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've just been watching the canal the last couple of days. Usually they open the May long weekend is the weekend they open the canal. I've seen no action at all. Is the canal, does anybody know, do we have any information as to when the canal is opening or if the canal is opening?
Yes, I can answer that question. The canal, the Parks Canada has aligned all of their canal systems, not just the Rideau, but the Trent Severn, with the provincial government guidelines. So the earliest that they would open would be June the 14th.
So would that not mean that then, most likely, that the Friends of the Rideau season would be shortened rather than lengthened? Because they only open when the canal is running.
And they're hoping to be open longer in the fall season, because typically they would they don't stay open, I don't believe, till the very end of the canal season, and that in part is has to do with the monies they have for staff.
Well, maybe so, but they're not opening at their regular time. I would think. I think we should verify their opening time, their opening date. My history tells me that they open on the same weekend that the canal opens. If you're telling me, as you did, that the canal's not open till June 14th, I believe, then doesn't that mean Friends of the Rideau isn't opening till June 14th, which is a good 3 weeks past their regular time?
I don't know that they are always open at the very first, if you will, time that the locks are open. I'm not 100% on that. From my perspective, I think it warrants, notwithstanding what you're saying, maybe delay in opening this year. They certainly are utilizing the money to stay open longer, i.e., into the fall than they would historically stay open. So, from my perspective, I'm supportive of their request and the recommendation from staff. Anyway, gentlemen, so thank you for your comments. So I'm going to change the Marrickville Organization for Culture and Arts. Originally, I had said the $3,220, and I'm going to put in, I believe it was an even $5,000. That's in the report. That's correct, Kirsten?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What was that?
So we're going to for the Marrickville Organization for Culture and Arts. The request is $5,000, and that's what I'm going to put in the motion to go around the table for support. I just want to make sure I've got the right number.
Yeah, I'm just verifying that. $5,000 for cash grant and $300 for fee waiver.
Yep. Thank you. So I've changed the number in the motion and I've initialed it. So again, members, I'll read the last part of the motion out and go around the table for approval of the motion. That Council allocates the funds for the community grant line item to be distributed as follows. Marrickville Organization for Culture and Arts. The cash is $5,000. The in-kind is $300. Marrickville District Trail Society, $1,980, zero in kind, and Friends of the Rideau, cash $2,500, zero in kind. All in favor. Mr. Malloy.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Cameron.
Yes.
Then Mr. Halpney.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great conversation and great for support for our community and staff for putting together the report. And under unfinished business, we do have the deferred motion regarding the Chamber of Commerce Display Board, and then a recommendation for consideration for the Chamber of Commerce Display Board. And I do believe what I need is, from a process point of view, and I've definitely had some coaching on this from staff, Members, you will recall back in April the 26th, there was a motion moved by Mr. Foster and seconded by Mr. Cameron, which we ultimately deferred to May the 10th, and we've subsequently deferred to today. And there is a new motion for consideration, but prior to doing that, and again, I'll ask that for clarification, we need the mover and the seconder of the motion back on April 26th to to withdraw the motion so that we can move forward with a new motion of consideration. Is that correct, Mr. Robertson or Christina?
It's Doug here, Your Worship. Yes, that is correct. I can just, so that you have a very clear understanding of the protocol, there's a very short section in the procedure bylaw under 7.6D, which states, once a motion has been stated, it shall be deemed to be in possession of council, but at any time the member who moved a motion may request permission of the council to withdraw or modify the motion before discussing or an amendment, before a decision or an amendment. Permission to withdraw is not debatable. If there is no objection, the motion is withdrawn with general consent. If there is an objection, anyone may second the motion to withdraw, and the chair puts it to a vote.
Right. Okay. So easy schmeezy. We're going to go with this. So Mr. Foster, I would ask you if you are prepared to withdraw the motion of April the 26th, which would then allow us to have consideration of a motion of May the 25th. Are you amenable to withdraw that motion, sir, the original?
I withdraw the motion of April 26th.
Thank you very much. And just to clarify, back to Mr. Robertson, that is going to be captured in the minutes. I don't need to do anything other than on that motion that I have from April. I will put today's date and write in withdrawn by Councillor Foster.
Correct, Your Worship. Excuse me. Correct, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Your Worship, if I may just clarify, that's assuming that there is no objection, and I have heard no objection in the chamber.
Right. Okay, I'll do that formally. Is there any objection to that original motion being withdrawn? Mr. Malloy?
No objection.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
No.
And Mr. Halpney?
No.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, crossing T's, dotting I's. So now for council's consideration, there is a new motion, and let's try it again. We'll have a mover, Mr. Foster, and a seconder, Mr. Cameron. Whereas the Marrickville-Wolford District Chamber of Commerce represents a significant number of local businesses in the village and promotes and encourages the village's commercial sector. And whereas the Chamber of Commerce has requested priority use of 2/3 of the street side portion of the display board outside the Canada Post Office, located at 223 St. Lawrence Street, in order to display the Chamber's map of local businesses as well as the Chamber's business listing. And whereas approval of this request would allow space for community groups and other organizations to post approved notices on the remaining street side portion of the display board, be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby receive correspondence from Robin Eagle, President of the Marrickville-Wolford District Chamber of Commerce, regarding the Chamber's use of the street side portion of the display board located in front of the Post Office, dated April the 15th, 2021. And the Council does hereby approve the Marrickville-Wolford District Chamber of Commerce's map and business listing to be placed on the street side portion of the display board in priority over other organizations when space allows, and the Council directs that the village retain the key and right to remove any and all postings on the display board, including but not limited to the map or business listing, and to use the display board for other purposes at the village's sole discretion, and that requests from other community organizations to have items displayed in the display board will continue to be entertained, and that Council does direct staff to request the Chamber provide an appropriately sized map and business listing that fits 2/3 or less of the street side of the display board. I'm not sure if staff want to add any more than what is in the motion. If not, I'll go around the table to ask if there are any questions from council members. Anything additional from staff? Mr. Robertson?
I think the resolution addresses the issues that were raised by council in the past, Your Worship, but certainly happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, just one. It's just a matter of clarification. I agree with the 2/3, but are we designating the 2/3? So, for example, if they were to take their 2/3 and slap that right in the middle of the bulletin board, they would leave very little actual space for other posters to go up. You know, because the space around it would be very narrow. We could put the posters over top of the map, but that seems to be a defeated element. So what I'm looking at is, can we design it such that the 2/3 is from center, let's say, or wherever the third mark is, to the corners, and leave an adequate space either to the right or the left that represents the other third?
I think the intent.
Anybody?
The intent, I do believe, was to not have the 2/3 in the center, but I would turn to staff and ask if is there any way we can clarify that, or is it a given that it would not be the center?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's Doug Robertson. Staff's practice is that we try to optimize the space on the bulletin board on both sides. So our typical practice would be, in this case, to place the Chamber's documents to one side to optimize amount of space remaining for the rest of the community. Ultimately, although I can't imagine it going this way because we would be cooperating with the Chamber, ultimately council, the village retains sole discretion to remove documents if needed, if we feel that they don't fit and so forth. But certainly staff's practice has been to make sure things are positioned so that everybody has some space on the bulletin board.
I guess to Mr. Malloy's question, maybe I'm being a bit too presumptive, but is there a need to, if you will, delineate, if you will, 2/3, 1/3, as opposed to, in terms of, I guess I'll word it this way, a left and a right side? I think, is that the spirit of your question, Mr. Malloy?
Well, it came in part with this. I mean, because still in the package was that letter from Robin Eagle, and in one line it says, could we confirm that the postings onto the board will be determined by the Chamber? That's still in the package, so that hasn't been subtracted out, and I was glad to hear Mr. Robertson say that in fact it would be the village who would be putting up the posters that were given for posting. Is that what is? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, you are right that is in the original request, and the motion is not supportive of that request. Is that correct, Robertson? So we'll make sure I've stated that correctly, Mr. Robertson?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yep, thank you. Okay, any other questions, Mr. Malloy?
I don't think so, not for now anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Foster?
No questions.
Mr. Cameron?
Just a clarification,
yes,
if you will. It says here that the council does hereby approve Marrickville-Wolford District Chamber of Commerce map and business listing to be placed on the street side portion of the display board in priority over other organizations when space allows. Is that the meaning of that priority? Is that priority on their 2/3 that we're considering, or is that priority over the whole board?
Your Worship, if I may, that would be priority in the 2/3 area on that one side of the board.
Okay, thank you for that. And so, in the original request, there was it was to the reasoning behind obtaining space on the board was to eliminate the cenotaph display. Is that cenotaph display still on? is it still for consideration? Are we still going to move forward on that?
I believe, Your Worship, that question is addressed to me. That was a discussion, I believe, between Councillor Foster and the Chamber. My understanding, subject to clarification, was that this was intended to replace that request.
Okay, so with this new agreement, then that's not in this agreement that we just read, so the cenotaph would be still on for consideration. Is that correct?
No, we would be, I think from my perspective, I would say, reading the motion, that we've received, the request, and this is our response to the request. And I might actually go to Mr. Foster as the council liaison with the Chamber. Is that your understanding, that with the use of the bulletin board, that the Chamber isn't going to be pursuing a map at the cenotaph?
That was my understanding, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Answer your question, Mr. Cameron?
It does, and I find that concerning. I think I don't think that the bulletin board should be replacing the cenotaph project. I think it's something that we need to move forward with. So, thank you very much for your answer.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Any supplementary comment on that, Mr. Foster, from your perspective as the council liaison to the Chamber?
Well, again, I'm not speaking for the Chamber here, just from my own perspective. I think the whole cenotaph project was a very bad idea from a perspective of trying to lure tourists into the part of town that they're not visiting by putting a sign in the part of town that they're not visiting. Just seemed counterintuitive. On top of that, I really don't want to see our Cenotaph Park populated with commercial signage. I don't think that's a good idea either. So the hope was that this was a satisfactory resolution to that the Cenotaph Park would remain dedicated to being a Cenotaph Park, and that Chamber of Commerce their needs would be met by a sign in the village, closer to the village center. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Helpney?
No.
Okay, gentlemen, I'll go around the table calling for support of the motion. All in favor. Mr. Malloy?
For now, yes.
Well, the motion is now, yes, so, okay, thank you for the yes. All in favor, continuing, Mr. Foster?
Yes. Yep.
Yep, thank you, sir. All in favor, Mr. Cameron?
I'm going to vote no at this time, thanks.
All in favor, Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
And then the motion is carried. And moving on our agenda. Next item under advisory committees, and the motion of a mover and a seconder for this. The mover would be Mr. Foster. Seconder would be Mr. Cameron. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mariford-Wolford does hereby receive email correspondence from Annie DeGabio, Chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, dated May the 17th and May the 19th, 2021, and the Environmental Advisory Committee's draft agenda for a meeting on May the 26th, 2021, and that Council does hereby direct the Environmental Advisory Committee to abide by the Council's approved electronic meeting protocol, and that Council does hereby direct the Environmental Advisory Committee not to proceed with their meeting of May the 26th, 2021. And I'll just ask for clarification for the rationale behind this to Mr. Robertson. But I understand, my understanding is with a significant amount of work by staff outlining the moving forward with our advisory committees meeting electronically and fully supported by council, that the platform being proposed by the Environmental Advisory Committee does not conform with the with the Advisory Committee protocols, and that staff would be reminding whether it's the chairs or secretaries, certainly the advisory committees of I'm going to use the expression, the kind of electronic meeting platform to be used. Is that correct, Mr. Robertson?
We certainly can, Your Worship. Thank you. And the key point, Your Worship, was we just had direction from council in terms of the protocol and procedures, and a part of those protocols and procedures was for staff to make council aware if there was a deviation from that protocol. So that's why staff added this to the agenda for council's consideration.
Yeah, so I've put it in lay terms from technology point of view. From my perspective, it's what was being proposed was not the I'm going to say the Zoom, YouTube. It was a different kind of electronic platform.
That's correct, Your Worship. The protocol and the system that staff had set up to make sure that we were in compliance with the Municipal Act was to use Zoom as the platform for the meetings and to live stream the recorded sessions through YouTube. And what that would do is it would allow all of the recorded sessions for all advisory committees to reside publicly and be consistently and easily accessible to the public on one YouTube channel, essentially a website page where all of them could be easily found and consistently found by all members of the community. And by using a different platform, Google Meets, we would not be able to do that. There were some other issues with it as well. For example, there was no phone number established in the agenda where members of the committee or the council liaison would be able to phone in to the meeting for those parties that did not have sufficient broadband. And we understand on that committee from the survey results, there was at least one member of the committee that indicated they didn't have sufficient network, internet capability to be able to join virtually and would need to phone in.
Okay, so that reminder can go out to not just the Environmental Advisory Committee, but all the committees of the approved platform and protocols to utilize for meetings.
Certainly, yeah. Mayor Struthers.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions around the table, Mr. Malloy?
No.
Yeah, Mr. Foster.
No questions. No.
Mr. Cameron.
Yeah, I have a question. Did anybody on staff reach out to Annie and bring this to her attention? I don't understand the purpose of this coming this far to council to disqualify the meeting. Did staff not? It's our first time doing this. Did nobody reach out to her and help guide her through this request?
I'm certainly all. Whether it's all members of advisory committees, certainly the chairs of the advisory committees received the approved by council protocol and platforms to utilize. I'm not sure when it came to the attention of staff that it was a different platform being utilized. I'm not sure whether Mr. Robertson or Christina can answer that question.
Your Worship, I'm trying to do this from memory. I believe the agenda was received from staff by staff late last week. Don't quote me on the exact date, but I believe it was close to the end of the week. The thing, Your Worship, is staff are just raising this to abide by council's direction in the protocol as approved by council as a whole. So there was no direction in that protocol for staff to interfere between council's relationship with its advisory boards and with its advisory committees, and council are simply complying with the protocol and procedures that council approved, and we are following direction on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Cameron?
Basically a comment. I understand that there's protocols and procedures, but a little guidance as we restart these committees would have been helpful. I think that would be something that we should be able to provide without going through these steps.
Yeah, well, fair enough, Mr. Cameron. Although I do underscore that what staff put together for council to consider, and then forward to the advisory committees was very complete and concise, very clear, and at any rate, I'm sure with a reminder from staff to all of our committees, the protocols and platforms to use. So hopefully that will be a good reminder, and certainly if any of the committees have trouble, they can certainly reach back to staff if they need any assistance. So there you go. Any questions, Mr. Helpney?
No.
I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Do we have a recorded vote on that, please?
Absolutely. So I'll turn it over to typically our deputy clerk handles the recorded votes. So over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Your Worship. Are you in favor, Deputy Mayor Cameron?
I am not.
Councillor Foster?
Yes.
Councillor Halpenny?
Yes.
And Councillor Malloy?
Yes.
And Mayor Struthers?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion is carried, and so members know on the motion in front of me, I have circled the yea and nays as conducted by our deputy clerk.
Hi, David. Speaking Lily here.
Motion carried. And next on our agenda, discussion regarding tasks for advisory committees. And at this point, I would turn over to Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Your Worship. This was just added to the agenda for council's consideration after discussion with one or two council members, indicating that there was a feeling that council may have an opportunity here, should you wish to use it, to discuss potential tasks or projects that you would like the various advisory committees to undertake on behalf of council.
And from a process point of view, thank you, Mr. Robertson. I would suggest to members of council, and we can have a deadline date to get into staff to have on our next agenda, some suggestions of items that we would, we as a council would say, this would be a value to council and to the moving forward with, whether it's policy direction, initiatives, projects for our advisory committees to look into. And if everyone is amenable to that, would say to council members, send your suggestions for council's consideration to be in by, and I'll look for a date. I'm going to say this coming Monday. That way, in case there may be some duplication between, council members, that staff can put them together in a report for council to consider at the June the 14th meeting. I think that's a very good idea that, we give something, a task, if you will, to our advisory committees. They're keen to do work on behalf of council. So it's are you amenable to that, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Helpney?
Yes.
Okay, so staff, you take that as direction that members of council will email and ask Mr. Robertson, would it be to yourself or Deputy Clerk Christina to send via email we'll say by the end of the working day of Monday coming up, which would be good heavens, the 31st of the month. To whom should members of council send their emails to? There's silence. Mr. Robertson, are you there? Or
my apologies, Your Worship. I was still on mute. Certainly, council could address those emails to me directly.
Okay, and then staff will put a report together for our next council meeting agenda?
Correct.
That's great, thank you very much. And now we are going to be going in camera, similar to what we did before the start of the meeting. And if folks listening, we need about 2 minutes of silence while Christina does her magic from a technology perspective to put us in a position where we're able to go in camera. My question to staff is, should I read the motion to go in camera now, or wait for you to give me the signal to read the motion? I guess I need to read the motion publicly, and then we'll go to this radio silence, if you will, waiting to formally be in camera?
That's correct, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. So it'll be moved by Mr. Malloy and seconded by Mr. Halpney. Be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford does hereby move to an in-camera session at 3:55 p.m. under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, to address matters pertaining to 1. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and 2, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. All in favor? Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Halpty?
Yes.
The motion is carried, and we are now going to